There you can see on your screen that the recovery crew member there is doing some checks, some ordnance and hypergol checks at the moment. Again, making sure that the vehicle is safe to approach. Then they can climb onto the capsule, begin rigging operations, and prepare the vehicle to be lifted onto the recovery vessel. Today is Shannon. Shannon is making its way to the recovery zone here. But these fast boats, and we did see a jet ski also with the crew, make their way a little bit faster and get the recovery process started sooner until the recovery vessel makes its way to the landing zone. What you're seeing is a live view of the AX-3 crew inside of Dragon Freedom, patiently waiting for their recovery operations. They've made their way back down to Earth, and the recovery team is working their standard procedures in preparation for lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel, and then eventually will egress the crew for the first time in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, at this point, we're waiting for those ordnance and hypergol checks to complete.
Dragon SpaceX, hypergol sweeps, and unfired ordnance checks nominal. Rigging in progress. Approximately 5 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Copy, all Arthur, stand by.
And almost on call. That was an excellent call from crew to Dragon, saying that the hypergol checks are complete and the ordnance checks are complete, and they all completed nominal. So with that, we were able to proceed to the next phase of the dynamic operations, which allows rigging to begin so that we can hoist Dragon Freedom into Shannon. And we also heard there that crew will be having their PMC or private medical conference with SpaceX. With SpaceX Medical, and just checking in on crew. But as we reported earlier, or as MLA reported earlier, this crew's feeling healthy and happy to be home. Their visors are up, they are monitoring their systems, and over the next 25 minutes, we should be able to get them on board.
And there you can see on your screen our recovery vessel, Shannon, patiently waiting for the crew and capsule to be ready for lifting onto the recovery vessel. You can also see on Shannon, there is that landing pad there. That's because a helicopter is going to come and take the astronauts or the crew back to land. That's a much faster trip than, taking the recovery vessel all the way back to shore. So that's what that landing pad is for.
That's right. If you're just joining us, Axiom 3 crew has splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And at this point, we are waiting for that recovery, the recovery efforts to continue. SpaceX team has made first contact with the Dragon Freedom capsule and crew. Crew reported all nominal health checks. They're feeling good and excited to be home. And at this point, we are waiting for those rigging operations to continue to get Dragon onto Shannon, that recovery vessel, so that they can have their final medical checks and get on that helicopter, and get back home, get back to land.
Yeah, I'm sure the crew's pretty excited to be back home. Mm-hmm. Pretty excited to take a breath of fresh air, as you mentioned.
Exactly. Right, excited to be home after, the 3 weeks in orbit, right? 23 flight days, 21 days, 18 days aboard the International Space Station, where they accomplished a suite of activities.
Dragon SpaceX comm check on Dragon to ground public.
Clear.
And Dragon, you're coming in choppy. We have pretty ready comm right now, so we're going to take some steps to reconfigure Dragon communications before we step into the PMC.
Copy, SpaceX.
Some comms between the core, the crew, operations and resources engineer to the crew. And what you're seeing on your screen is the recovery team, again, a crew member on the capsule, beginning rigging for preparation of lifting the capsule out of the water and onto the recovery vessel. And this is really great that we had a daytime splashdown. We're getting some really excellent views of all of these operations happening.
It's a beautiful early morning for splashdown. The weather's looking fantastic. The local environment is looking fantastic for crews to perform these operations, right? We mentioned earlier that this is really a safety critical aspect of the mission. And one that's important to note that we talked about training earlier too, and this aspect of the mission is something that these crews train for heavily. This fast boat recovery team, the entire recovery team efforts, all train for their specific roles in today's operations like this. And when the weather is playing nominally with you like this, it allows for that to execute quite well. And so we're able to see these teams really execute kind of a picture-perfect recovery effort. Rigging is going smoothly. And they're progressing well into it at this point, and we're waiting for those next steps to be able to hoist Dragon into Shannon.
Yeah, you mentioned, training for these operations. Throughout this entire mission, everybody's following standard procedures. The crew has tablets inside of the capsule with them where they can follow, their procedures, basically their instructions. And the recovery team does the same thing. Yeah. They're following very standard procedures, going step by step, and making sure that they perform every step carefully and having verification of each one of those steps. So while it may look like they're just doing their work, they're actually, following very specific instructions.
Exactly.
And again, what you're seeing on your screen is a recovery crew member on board of the Dragon capsule, rigging the vehicle in preparation for lifting onto or hoisting onto the recovery vessel. And honestly, the recovery team must be just as excited as the crew. They're going to be the first people.
Oh, yeah. I think that was intentional,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Definitely.
But right, it's a great view that kind of, to me signifies what Shannon's role in this operation is, right? Right now it's sitting and waiting while making approach, while the primary contact team is ensuring that rigging is, executed properly, but then also verified and checked, as you mentioned, part of the procedures prior to performing the hoist operation to get Dragon into its comfortable nest. And at that point, we have additional crew members, like you said, that we're going to be very excited to get this Dragon on board. But it takes time, and we've got to go a little slow, because slow is smooth, and then smooth is fast, and that allows us to get crew on board.
Yeah, and once Dragon is in that nest, we saw that it was near the end of the ship. It will actually slide forward to position itself next to a platform, which will be level with the hatch. So when they open the hatch, the astronauts can egress comfortably out of the Dragon capsule there.
Excellent service. And that is a beautiful shot if you're just tuning in to see Shannon, the recovery vessel, SpaceX's recovery vessel in the Atlantic, ready to meet and greet and hoist the AX-3 crew upon their splashdown today off the coast of Florida.
And for those wondering what this landing pad is for, again, once the crew egresses the vehicle, they will, do some safety and health checks to make sure that the crew is healthy. But then they'll board a helicopter that's going to land on that landing pad that will take them back to land pretty quickly. So they've got some great service, as you mentioned.
And what's excellent about this view, too, is you can really see a lot of aspects of these operations kind of play out.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
Loud and clear, SpaceX. Copy.
Copy. We have you the same. We are transmitting through Shannon recovery vessel now, and with this, I'm going to try and set up the quick PMC with flight surgeon.
Okay, standing by.
Hearing a little bit of calm there between Core and Commander Lopez Alegria on Dragon Freedom, waiting to establish some communication so that they can talk with SpaceX medical surgeon. But during that time, crews on ground, or in the water actually, are continuing to make operations or proceed through operations to prepare Dragon for hoist into the recovery vessel Shannon. So you can see on your left there the initial fast boat that made initial covery and proceeded through rigging operations for the Dragon spacecraft. And the recovery vessel Shannon nearing or making closer approach to Dragon to begin the hoisting operations.
There you can see, as John mentioned, the recovery vessel is now beginning to pull the Dragon capsule towards it.
Dragon SpaceX, we are back on Dragon to ground public.
Loud and clear.
I think what's amazing about this shot, Jesse, is it looks like it's all so simple. And the care and precision that has to go into this operation from all of the teams that you see, that you can't even see in this shot, that are supporting this type of operation, is amazing. To allow for that hydraulic lift now to come down and begin this hoisting operation. All of this was a very tightly choreographed dance to get us to this point, and it's really exciting to see us getting here to where we're about to hoist Dragon into the nest.
Yeah, exactly. It may look easy, but it is, a lot of training, a lot of effort, a lot of planning goes into these operations. of the capsule. So moving it towards the platform, that platform will be just at the bottom of that hatch. And that hatch has been closed since they left Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks. Stand by for translation to the egress platform.
SpaceX Dragon, we copy.
Calls there between Core and Commander Lopez Alegria to confirm that crew is that we are preparing to press into the egress phase of today's operations. But yeah, Jesse, you mentioned that that side hatch that they'll be coming out of hasn't been opened in a number of weeks, and that's because when they're on orbit, right, they're using the hatch that's under that nose cone, the docking hatch, to translate between their vehicle and ISS. So once they close that door on launch day, it doesn't open until today.
And I'm sure the crew is very excited for that side hatch to open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We did hear some comms talking about this, but the crew, the recovery crew there, is doing some last safety checks now that the vehicle is on the deck of the recovery vessel prior to the translation motion of moving the capsule towards the egress platform. Live view inside of the capsule that is on the recovery vessel, with the crew still inside, patiently waiting.
That's right. If you're just joining us, we're in the final phases of the recovery of the splashdown of the AX-3 crew, which splashed down back to Earth earlier today at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, or 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. We're in those final phases of recovery efforts, which is the next step up being hatch open. So this will be the first time that crew has exited that side hatch in over 3 weeks, or about 3 weeks, or 23 flight days and 21 days in space. Crew is currently in the Dragon vehicle, but on board the recovery vessel Shannon, as ground crews are still preparing some final tweaks and preparations to translate the vehicle into a position that crew can egress.
If you're just now joining us, you are watching live coverage of the AX3 splashdown and recovery, currently in progress. On your left-hand screen, you can see that the Dragon capsule, Dragon Freedom, is on board our recovery vessel, Shannon. The recovery crew is doing their final checks prior to the translation of the capsule towards the egress platform. The next event coming up will be side hatch opening up. And that will be the first time that the hatch will be opened since launch day. And the Axiom 3 crew will take their first breath of fresh air since boarding Falcon 9 at the start of their mission on January 18th. You can see the crew live on your right-hand screen inside of the Dragon capsule. Again, patiently waiting.
Right, ground crews are still walking through their procedural checks and verifications to ensure that Dragon is in a safe position to translate, and it looks like they have made that call. So you can see Dragon there translating now.
Very exciting. I'm sure the crew can feel that movement, and they're getting really excited for that hatch to open. There's that egress platform that we've been mentioning. You can see the recovery crew there just preparing the vehicle in preparation for that side hatch opening. And a good view inside of Dragon. We have the commander on the left-hand side, pilot on the right-hand side. You can see the displays there.
Dragon SpaceX, ground team is making final preps for hatch open. Stand by for side hatch opening.
Standing by.
You can see those displays. Right behind that display is the hatch, and that is what the crew is looking at. So as soon as that side hatch opens, the crew will be able to see the recovery crew and the medical crew there waiting there for them.
Right, and these are those initial checks that we talked about. The first people that the crew is greeted by is by the medical teams to just ensure that they're doing well after their flight and after their return home, and they'll make some medical assessments and make sure they're okay. And at that point, crew is egressing the vehicle and onto that helicopter ride back home. There is the hatch opening. Welcome home, crew of AX3.
Now that that side hatch is open, they are going to put a protective tool there to ensure that the crew is safe when they egress the vehicle. And their first human interaction with someone from Earth in the last 3 weeks.
It's a great example of even in this moment, right? The hatch is opened, crew is ready to get out. We're still taking our time to make sure that they're okay, that everything on board is as it should be, and at that point we'll begin crew one by one, leaving the their Dragon Freedom vehicle.
And this again is a standard procedure. Even when they're getting up out of their seats, it's very important that they are very careful. They've been in space for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so the crew there will also, help them if the crew needs help, make sure that they're healthy and safe as they're egressing through that side hatch.
Exactly. It can be, a little bit different when you've been in space for a few days.
Yeah, no
experiencing
gravity.
microgravity. So exactly right. That type of assistance, if needed, is there and able to be provided as support. That is an amazing view of the AX-3 crew, waving, smiling, of course, as they have been since launch day on January 18th.
Some great waves. You can see their very excited faces there. That was awesome.
That was a wonderful shot. That was a wonderful shot. Thumbs up there between ground crews and commander. As we mentioned earlier, this is MLA's second trip on the AX on Crew Dragon for an Axiom mission. So he's aware of this process and this procedure. I'm sure he's telling his crew, "Hey guys, we're going to take our time." And it looks like they are ready to proceed with egress.
Yes, you could see MLA removing his harness. Again, frequent flyer, as you've mentioned, our first frequent flyer on Dragon. Super exciting.
Maybe he'll get to put a sticker on the inside of the capsule.
You can see there that they've installed basically a protective tool around the hatch, the side hatch, as well as a little bit of a ramp there so that the crew can safely egress. They are still in their suits and also need to protect the suits themselves. So we will make sure that the suits do not get damaged as they're egressing. You'll see that the recovery crew there will help them exit, may put their hand over their helmet just to make sure that they don't bump their head. And there's a few people there to help them, which is great.
Right, and like we mentioned, this is their first moment back on Earth, and in 23 days, gravity is going to be a familiar but reminder of an experience. And so, coming out of this hatch, it's it may seem and look simple, but there are some nuances associated with it, with wearing that suit that you want to protect for, with also protecting for just your mobility coming back from this mission with its mission duration. You certainly want to be aware of their first time back in gravity in a while. So all of those translation aids really help ensure that when they're getting out of the vehicle, they're doing it as safely as possible, but also as comfortably as we can let them.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned, the side hatch is open, but they're not running out of their seats,
Right,
right? They're taking, it is step by step, removing the harnesses. They did remove some of the feet rests at the bottom of their seats. All of these things to make it easier for them to exit the vehicle.
Right, because at the end of the day with all of this, you want to make sure that you're comfortably getting out of the vehicle. And we saw there ground crews reminding crew, hey, just might want to close that visor just to be safe.
And to watch their, watch their head as they're
Exactly.
getting out of their seat.
Exactly. Yeah. And we see the pilot making his way out of his seat and about to egress the vehicle. So Walter Villaday will be taking his first steps in 23 days on Earth. And we can see Walter coming out of Dragon, having some assistance from ground crews. Visor up.
Awesome.
And I do think I see a smile on that face. And a wave. A wave and a thumbs up. Walter is feeling good.
Welcome home, Walter Villaday. If you're just now joining us, we are watching the live egress of the Axiom 3 crew. And you can see that Marcus Want, our mission specialist coming out of seat 4, is getting ready to egress the Dragon Freedom capsule.
This will be Marcus's first steps in gravity in 23 flight days, 21 days in space, and 18 days aboard the International Space Station. So we're taking our time and making sure that he is comfortable and making sure that he's going to be safely egressing the vehicle. Welcome home, Marcus. Again, visor up, and I think, of course, we're going to see Marcus smiling. Yeah, we are. Okay.
There we go. Some waves.
He's giving his wave. Marcus is feeling good. This is excellent to see. Crew's going to assist as we take those first steps back in gravity. And our third egress of the day, we have Alper Gezeravcı, the first Turkish astronaut to fly to space. Alper is looking good. He's excited. He's excited. He's ecstatic. He's happy to be home. He's giving excellent smiles and a great fist bump there. I love to see that.
Last but definitely not least, our frequent flyer, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria.
And even with that frequent flyer card, MLA is no stranger to this maneuver, but he is also taking his time, and he is looking good. And welcome back, MLA. Excellent. It is wonderful to see all 4 crew members of AX3 egress comfortably and safely out of the Dragon Freedom that they've spent their time in for the last 2 days, certainly, but also just a number of days on this mission. But they're looking good, they're looking healthy, and it was wonderful to see. So.
Well, now that our crew are safely back